Hello, Tessa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tessa. It's really nice to meet you. How are you?
N- Nice to meet you as well.
Wow.
I'm doing well.
It's been a lot of weeks that we were planning this talk, but vacation
hmm
came in the middle.
Yeah, it's been yeah. I think we both had some vacations or out of town for a bit, so it's nice to finally sit down and talk and do this.
Yeah, of course. So, um, I contacted you and I really wanted to have this conversation with you because the message you just wrote online was really deep, and a lot of people, can recognize themselves inside this message. And the title of the message for the people who didn't saw that is I didn't expect the grief after losing my job. It wasn't just work, it was my identity.
hmm
And if I can read it like really fast because it's really well written,
Thank you.
no one tells you how disorienting it feels to be let off. I expected stress, I expected financial panic. What I didn't expect was the silence that came after, the sudden free fall into not knowing who I was without my title, my inbox, or my structure, my office. I
hmm
started journaling just to process it. Some days I wrote a lot, some days I just stared out the window. Over time, I realized I wasn't just looking for a new job. I was trying to rebuild the part of myself I'd wrapped around my role. Wow, I don't have it all figured out, but I know I'm not the only one who's felt this kind of quiet unraveling. If you've been there or are into it now, I see you. I'm not here to offer advice, just a small reminder you are not broken. You are grieving something no one else can see, and that matters too. Wow, it really touched me. It really touched me. So,
I'm glad it touched at least someone. It was definitely probably the most vocally vulnerable I've ever been outside of my family.
mm,
I'm a very private person. I'm not social media put everything out there for the world. I'm a very, you do not put your dirty laundry on the clothesline kind of gal.
mm.
Um, and so for me to rate that, it was kind of a low point for me, and I needed to know that I was not the only one who felt this kind of extreme reaction um, to a choice that I didn't even have the chance to make.
Mm.
It wasn't my choice to get laid off. I didn't choose to leave my job, and it was something completely out of my control. Um, and it was like a really intense and violent breakup that I didn't see coming.
Yeah, by reading this message, I just felt like it was really deep, and it touched me also because I was laid off last year in December,
Mm-hmm.
and I just felt really lost. But I think we will go deep into it later. So,
Mm-hmm.
to the people who may not know you yet, how would you like to introduce yourself?
Um, I'm Tessa. Um, I'm from the U.S. My background, I have a bachelor's in communication theory and psychology, and then I have a master's degree in developmental psychology, mainly focusing on adult learning. Um, After I graduated, graduated my master's into I guess, a workforce that was small. Um, it was really hard to get a job
Mm.
back when I started. So we're talking like early 2000s. Not to date myself or age myself out here, but and so I took a job that was available as an administrative assistant
Mm.
um, in a fundraising office, basically an alumni and fundraising office at a university. Um, and then just worked my way up from there. Ended up in clinical clinical research, and then worked my way from an administrative assistant to a director up to a global manager in 15 years.
I just had a question about, you said that when you graduated, it was at a time difficult to find a job. What was the problem? Was it about economy or the opportunities that were available?
So back in 2010, 2011,
Okay.
I went and got my master's because when I graduated from college in the early 2000s, the job market was hard. It was hard to get people to notice you because there were so many of us that all had, degrees. There was nothing about, I think, my generation that stood out in the job market. So it was more about who you knew and what connections you had made. And unless you really stood out, it was hard to get a job and I feel like we also thought we were a little entitled at the time too, like where we shouldn't be doing, admin work because we have a degree. And,
yeah.
It was definitely a humbling experience and kind of eye-opening to say, just because you have a degree doesn't mean you deserve. You still have to start at the bottom.
Yeah.
Wherever you go. And so I went and got my master's as a way to have like a stopgap and maybe differentiate myself a little bit. And it did, but I still started off as an administrative assistant, as a secretary. And so it was just a really tough market because there was a flood of people and the jobs didn't match the credentials of the people that were flooding in. So you had to be willing to humble yourself. And I think in my youthful hubris, I wasn't ready to humble myself yet.
And you just say that you had a bachelor. So in America, what I've noticed that most of people start to work with just bachelors. Looks like in the past wasn't so much mandatory to jump into masters because maybe their masters is considered like a plus, that you do after you have some work experience. But in France, it's like a one shot. So you go to school the first time and then you finish in masters. You can't skip it.
You just keep going.
Yeah, you can't skip it because if you skip it, you will be downvoted, downgraded, and you won't have the same salary levels, a minimum than anyone, and you will be supervised in your job, so you can't be 100% free in your job. So you need to stay here from 9 to 5, and you can't move, you can't take a vacation like you want. So looks like a baby. Yeah. Looks like a baby. And I experienced it. It was back in 2017. In 2017, I just had in my life really some really bad wave. So I didn't have the money to pursue my study. So I was at 1 year of finishing my 5 years business school. But the school was really expensive.
Yeah.
And I just was thinking, okay, maybe I can just work. I already have 4 years of business school, and I will just work and then save for 1 year and buy and pay my school to continue to finish it. So I didn't have the master, so I had bachelor plus 1 year, so master 1, but not really a master, so you need to do 2 years. And when I found that job, it was inside an installation company. They treated me like a piece of shit, really. They treat me like a trash. If you don't have the masters, you are treated like a second-class worker. They don't teach you the job, they let you figure it out, and they give you all the things that are not cool to do. And they don't help you improve. So there is no people management. And
that's a lot different than
Sorry?
here. Because a lot of companies will pay for you to get your master's here. And then a lot of master's programs, depending on which one you go into, you can master's with work experience.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so it's a little different. I went straight through because I took a year trying to find a job. And I did a contract job for a little while. And when that ended, I decided to go back and go ahead and get my master's before going into full workforce. But yeah, it's funny though, because I feel like, you know, you get your degree and you get your master's, and I didn't do anything remotely close to what I went to school for. It literally has nothing to do with it. But I think coming into clinical research, when I finally got there, I had a vastly different perspective and a view on how to do my job than everyone else did, because they had all been trained in the same way or learned the same thing. So I brought an outside perspective that wasn't there. So eventually that's what set me apart.
Was it difficult for you to adapt to them because they were trained in the same way?
The only thing that was difficult was understanding the nuances of clinical research, because they have acronyms and words for things. And so I had like a running list that I would keep track of medical terminology and research terminology that I had never been exposed to before, that I had to learn on the fly. Nobody was like, hey, this is what it means. So I would be the kid in the back on the meeting going, can you tell me what that means? At the risk of sounding stupid, I don't know what you're saying. So I definitely got over my fear of raising my hand and asking the dumb questions, because I figured if I had it, maybe somebody else had that question too.
So in the past 15 years, you just climbed the corporate ladder in a really spectacular way. So really congratulations for that. And I know a little the pharmaceutical industry, and I know it's an industry that is highly stressful, highly stressful. And I think people really deserve their job when they just work there. You know, there's no shortcuts, you know, to be in that industry. So really, hats off, like Americans say. So I just wanted to get, you know, for the people who listen to us, you know, some kind of advices that help you, you know, climb into the corporate ladder of a competitive industry, and that had a lot of requirements.
The biggest advice that I have, and that I applied to every single role that I went into, whether that was starting off as an admin, I would go in, I would learn my role inside and out for the first 6 months. I would really dedicate myself to becoming a master of that little universe and understanding everything and becoming kind of like the expert of it. And then I would sit down and I would look at it and kind of analyze the tasks, the systems used, the people that were around. I'd observe the politics, who interacted with whom, what departments interacted with what department, and really kind of lay it out. And once I understood that, I would figure out ways to streamline. I'd look at basically, what are small process improvements? What are innovations that I can do within the system that are small tweaks that aren't going against the training, that aren't bucking the rules, that don't look like I'm trying to say, hey, I know it all. I have a master's, so you should listen to me. But more of saying, hey, I'm doing this to be supportive to your goals. I'm doing this because I see you spending X amount of time looking at these spreadsheets, but if you just use this formula or you use this tweak, you could save 3 hours out of your day. And just making it more about me helping others and streamlining and innovating those processes. I think that's what really helped me to stand out, was being the quiet innovator who was supporting others in their goals, but ultimately what I was doing behind the scenes was I was completely rewriting my job description. I turned an administrative position into someone who looked at clinical research associates and their turnover rates and trying to find why turnover rates were so high and what's a strategy that we could do to change that. Just kind of by being efficient in my role, I had more time for pet projects for myself to try to make myself stand out a little bit more. So consistency, curiosity, and initiative. Big three.
Like as you said, that you really took initiative to help your coworkers. I just kind of listen and see too that in the corporate world of today, when you tend to help your coworkers, they kind of taking it for granted and kind of abusing it, and you don't see really well the reward every time, So in my corporate experience, I've seen that people are really less and less helpful. So how you manage, to get the good rewards while managing to help people? Did you find some people who were taking advantage of you?
Oh, absolutely. I had someone that took full credit on a call with it was a very large group of people. This was, halfway through, a couple of years out from being an admin. I was like a senior data analyst at that point. I took full credit for everything that I did. I built the system. I wrote the training, everything. And on the call, she took 100% credit. Oh, I've had this great idea, and this is how we do it, and this is how we implement it. So, being on that call with her, instead of saying, hey, wait a minute, no, that's my idea, right? Because I didn't want to look childish, and I didn't want to look petty. I started asking her questions that I knew only I could answer about it.
In front of people?
In front of everyone.
Wow.
So asking questions about, what is the back end of this program and how did you build it? Like where in the analytics, what are we using as, our base? What are we baselining this against?
Wow, this is really smart.
Because I knew that she didn't know the answer to those.
Wow.
And since she couldn't answer, everybody was like, so how did you develop this? And I'm like, and so she stumbled through that whole thing and completely embarrassed herself. And towards the end, I was like, I just laid out kind of like, well, why don't we do X, Y, and Z to make this function correctly? And I actually have some examples of training materials that we can use to make this clear for people in a more, common language instead of a technical language. And so in the back of people's minds, they knew she didn't do it. Within 3 months, I was promoted.
Wow.
But I didn't do it in a way that was outwardly malicious. I didn't do it in a way that was calling her on the carpet for it or calling her out. I did it in a way to where I looked like I was genuinely seeking information. So that's how I play that game.
So I think that's really a really highly smart way to play the corporate game, because the corporate game is kind of sometimes humanly difficult because, if we say the truth, in corporate, you can't use logic, to interact with people. Logic don't have place there, and that's a thing that unfortunately we never learn at school, at any school in the world. We never know. So now the Gen Z, when they start to work, they're just crying. I'm watching some TikTok where they just spend one day inside a new company and already resign, crying and thinking like it's a play garden, So, but how did you see the difference in the work environment once you started 15 years ago and now?
Once I started and then now?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it depends on your job title. I think your job title has a lot to do with it. Once you break through into that proverbial title, glass ceiling between associate, assistant, whatever you want to call it, below a manager level, people will not take you seriously. Because they feel like you don't have the experience, you don't have the knowledge. You could be doing that job for 10 years. And I saw people that were, very, very well educated, knew what they were doing and talking about, but because they had the associate behind their title, or assistant, or analyst, their word wasn't weighed as heavily. So the title matters, I think, more than the substance of what you say, which is sad. It's really, really sad. And I think when I first started out, it was more about, you saw the heavy hitters, you saw those sharks, and it was just expected that you just keep your head down, you get your work done, and you go home. And now people are becoming more and more vocal and speaking up about it. But I think that just being vocal and being loud doesn't do anything. You have to be strategic and pick your battles about what you're vocal about. So, does it really matter the color of the coffee cups that you have in the break room? Is that a big deal? Or, should you save your battle for something more like, I'm consistently working until 8 o'clock every night, but I'm not getting paid for that? Let's draw a line. Why am I consistently working until 8 o'clock every night? So, my advice is pick and choose your battles very wisely, and then understand what motivates those other people around you. Is it just recognition for them? Is it, for the company? What is it that drives them to succeed? And how do you play into that? How can you play off of that as well for yourself?
Now, so I just kind of see, maybe you share, maybe you're not, that point of view, but I see that our Western companies are kind of going downgraded, like the Asian part company like a BYD and all of this. They have, of course, a hard work culture. And of course title matters, but feel like they just can make themselves work much more efficiently toward the same goal than us. And I feel like Western companies, even in France, in America, it's the difficultness in our way to interact, to do business together, to participate to that makes us sometimes miss innovations, that make us sometimes don't do the job at the level that we could doing it really well, So that was my experience first when I just did consulting, and I was so much highly motivated. But the work life and the reality I saw on the field just made me convinced to just do the bare minimum. I was just doing the bare minimum because nobody was recognizing or saying something or putting value on the extra effort that I was giving, because everyone was doing the bare minimum and just waiting for their paychecks, and that was sad. And then a few years later, that company just died because everyone was disconnected to the company's goal. And we find that the company have a hole of 7.5 billion and nobody could find where the money went, and it destroyed a lot of lives finally, So I don't know if that's that's also your point of view on the way you see corporates today.
Yeah, it's a business. At the end of the day, right? It's a business machine. Whether it's tech, clinical research, um, banking, anything. It's a business machine that's there to make money. But I think the onus on the company is, how do you invest in your people enough that they want to grow that machine and help you grow that machine? And how do you do that? And it's not by putting in rigid systems in place. It's allowing for new ideas. It's allowing for new voices, and not kind of pushing those down when you don't fall in line at the assembly line. It's giving a space for that. And whether that's, how do we improve the current system, or do we need a new system? I think, honestly, I think with the older generations, once you started at a company, you stayed at that company, right? You felt loyal to that company, and you worked your way 20, 30 years from start to retirement in that company. But that's not the case anymore. People are leaving 6 months, a year, 2 years, hopping around. I personally only worked in my professional career, 3 different places. I stayed at one company for a very long time, and the only reason why I left was because another company offered to double my salary to do the exact same job I was doing.
Wow.
How could you say no to that, right?
Impossible.
So, and that's the only reason why I left, because I knew the only way I was going to break that salary ceiling was to leave and then potentially come back later, because I'd seen countless other people do it. So I don't think that loyalty is there anymore, because I don't think the companies are looking at their employees as an asset. They're just looking at them as tools. And that's sad. That's really, really sad.
They're just looking at them like collaborators, maybe. Yeah, because I felt like since some years in the past in France, I don't know if it's the same in America, but in French we say employé. So when you work in a company, we say, okay, we are employee of this company, so we work for them. So we are the people the company hired. And then 7 years, 8 years ago, nobody say employee anymore. All the companies shifted communications, and they started to say collaborators. So they just put the company and the employee in the same level. So we just collaborate toward the same goal. And it felt like odd to me, because looks like the company was saying, okay, you are just a service provider for us. So we just pay you to provide us a service. And later on, we saw that companies started to invest less and less on people and make less and less raises. And then inside these collaborators people, they just choose like 1,000 people, and those people, they just call them key talent. So all of the rest of people was just a bunch of garbage, so we can replace us with. I felt so bad, and then I just find people inside the company that were working for the company for like 17 years. They were crying to the HR office. Why I'm not a key employee? Me too. I don't like. I did so much for this company. Why I can't have this title? That was crazy.
I don't think it's that different over here, especially the bigger the company. So, I've worked for are companies that have 40,000 plus employees globally. I think the largest they topped out at 135,000 global employees. And so we're just a number. Right. But I think the smaller companies definitely still have that, I don't want to say old school for risk of sounding trite, but they have that old school view of employees are family. We spend a lot of time with people that we work with, right? More so than our own personal family.
Yeah.
So
that's sad.
I feel like if we're going to spend that much time away, that's how we get mixed up with our work as our identity.
Yeah.
Because we spend so much time with these people and so much time with this company that they become kind of a surrogate family that you spend all of your time with. And, you know, I'm not saying fight the man or, you know, corporate is bad. I'm just saying that we should probably refocus personally on how we want our identity to be created. And not put as much stake in our job as we do, especially those that are in corporate or, you know, those kind of business machines.
I think what you say is really important, and it's a kind of a good bridge because now we need to talk about the layoff side of the story. You know, the first part was really for introduction, you know, to put the foundation of your stories and get some point of view on how you see the corporate world. And now it's really the deep subject, you know, the layoff. And we've seen a lot of layoffs lately. Layoff going like almost every day. So there's a website, I don't know if you know that website, that just have all the layoffs that happen in America.
Yeah.
In the real
The
time.
layoff counter.
Yeah. That's really insane.
Yeah. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right? How many layoffs are happening and have been happening for the past, I want to say it's like these mass layoffs have really been kind of forefront in everybody's mind since the pandemic, really.
Yeah, since the pandemic.
And so, for me, my layoff, I had seen other people at my company and companies that I had been at prior get laid off.
Really?
You know, mass layoffs. And from the outside, you always look at it and you're like, man, I feel bad for them. But, you know, you're sympathetic, you're sad for them, but at the same time, you have that quiet relief of, oh, it wasn't me. I'm still good enough. Right?
Yeah.
They didn't look at me because I'm okay. There must have been something for them that made them stand out for a layoff, to make them get flagged for that. What I didn't fully understand until it happened to me, again, was that identity loss. But what happened was in the week leading up to it, I wasn't expecting it. They had just done a massive round of layoffs. And nobody had said that our department was doing layoffs. There had been no whispers, none of that. And mind you, I also worked from home. So I was a home-based employee since well before the pandemic. So I haven't been in an office in a long time. So it's not like I got the water cooler gossip or the break room gossip. But the week leading up to it, I noticed that when I had finished a bunch of very large projects, that I didn't have a new one assigned right away. And I was told it was because there's nothing new that came in. It's been kind of slow right now. I noticed meetings that disappeared off of my calendar that normally I would have been involved in or invited to. And so when I asked, they're like, oh, we just moved it because so-and-so couldn't make it. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, that makes perfect sense to move the meeting. And so it was kind of like, you know, everything was fine. I didn't really expect anything until the morning of. So the morning of, I actually had to take one of my children to the doctor for like just a regular standard like eye checkup. Took them to school, came home, and when I came home, there was a meeting on my calendar that hadn't been there before I had left that morning. It didn't even have like really a meeting title, right? It was just a generic meeting. And I was like, okay, weird. And I saw that it was my boss on there, and then there was another person who I actually didn't know who that person was. But by the time I got home and saw the meeting, I had like 5 minutes before the meeting started. So I didn't even look up who this other person was. So I logged on, and they logged on, and I had my camera on because virtual, right? So I always have my camera on. Nobody had their cameras on. And I was like, well, this is weird. Why aren't there cameras? And it just started with, so we didn't hit our numbers. Corporate says we didn't hit our numbers. We need to find ways, as you know, to reduce, and you're being laid off. There was no preamble. There was no lead up. It was just, so you're done, essentially. And I remember just sitting there, blank stare on my face. My camera's the only one on, staring at a black screen in front of me, and just sitting there. And they go, it was like they were reading from a script, and it was like a robot was talking to me as my boss was talking to me. And the other person turned out to be an HR person. And he spoke up. He's like, do you have any questions? And still, I'm still stuck in like the beginning, like 10 minutes ago in the meeting, right? I haven't even processed anything anybody said. It's just kind of I remember feeling like frozen and just, I do not know what's happening right now. Is this real life? And then I finally tuned back in. I'm like, no, I don't even know what questions to ask right now, right? Like, you give me this, and then you say, do you have any questions? And it's just like, I don't even know where to start. And so my brain's starting to catch up with everything that's happening. It starts racing a mile a minute, like jumping to, how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to pay my mortgage? Like, how am I going to do anything? And it completely blocked out what they were saying and went into complete survival mode. Like, shock to survival mode like that. And then I tuned back into the conversation, and my boss was like, why don't you just take the rest of the day for yourself? And it's like, so you lay me off and then you give me a blessing of taking the rest of the day for myself. That's kind of contradictory, isn't it? Meaning, implying that they would pay me for a full day and not a half day. Because I realized as we were ending that conversation that my accesses were being turned off through the conversation.
What?
Everything was shutting down.
The Teams?
Within 5 to 10 minutes of that Teams meeting ending, Teams shut down. My email shut down. But throughout the meeting, throughout that call, all of the access to my files, to my folders, to like the internal sites, all of that had already been cut off before the call even ended. So, trying to pull off, like some companies will have like internal systems where you can like print off your year-end, mid-year reviews, where you can print off your pay stubs. All that was, I had to email in and request special access to get those files after the fact. So yeah, so it was definitely, and the call ended. And I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse that I was not a home-based employee, that this didn't happen in an office, because I didn't have to do that quote-unquote walk of shame. But at the same time, the isolation, the loss, the fact that I was deemed disposable was instantly obvious, because it was just me in my house, alone, in my office, with a computer that no longer worked, and it was just quiet. Wow. And so that moment just really hit harder because there was no one around.
how did you felt, in the part of mental health, like after the call, everything is shut down, you can't use the computer anymore, nobody calling you, and the day just started.
I think I just sat there for a minute in the quiet, trying to process and understand what truly had happened. And then I cried. I just broke down because I don't think my mind or my body could process anymore. And then I got mad at myself for crying because I'm like, for God's sake, you're a grown woman. It's just, it's a job. Like, you can get another job. And then I got really, really angry. Like, just obscenely, like, inhumanly angry that what was it? Because my reviews weren't bad. I didn't have poor performance. I hadn't been written up or reprimanded or, so it was a question of why me. And I didn't understand why. And it's not like they would tell me, or they just said your position has been terminated effective immediately.
But that's really crazy because you worked for the company for years. You just gave your time because work life is our time we just borrowed to the company for a living, and you gave them your time, you gave them your youth, you gave them anything that you could because you were really focused on your career, because at this level of position, they just kind of need to have access to you at any time almost, because it's a high position. And just like that, for, people you worked with, people you spend the most time with, you knew well, you knew maybe kids, names, maybe being invited, all of that. So what was the reason of this layoff? Was it really for economic problems, or was it for relocating your job somewhere else?
So on the surface, they said it was economic, right? They didn't mean it. But I came to find out later, because I was told before the call ended, not to reach out to my colleagues, not to talk to them about this. But a few did reach out to me, and they're like, oh, by the way, after your position was eliminated, they opened up new spots in different countries that actually have a lower salary point. They opened up 3 new spots. So I guess my salary could fund 3 other people in a different country to have a job. So I'm really excited for them. I'm happy for them. But at the same time, to say that it would take 3 people to do my one job, I mean, it's kind of a compliment to me if you think about it. But it was just, it's literally so they can churn more work through.
So, we usually think the people who are really up, in a hierarchy are, the most protected to this kind of layoffs.
No, you would have to be way high. And you'd have to be, politics-wise in the company, you would have to be really on the ends with the end people in the politics to be able to be protected. But I've seen VPs get fired, laid off. I've seen presidents of divisions get laid off. So I don't think necessarily that your title protects you. I think it's who you know that protects you. So those relationships are really important.
And sometimes to have access to that relationship that can protect you, it's really almost impossible sometimes. Wow. So, what, employers that are doing layoffs, because we've seen a lot of videos online, happening in different manner. Some people even have like an AI just reading a script and shutting off the meeting after finishing the reading. and some people have like a mass layoff, like a 300 people inside a Zoom call, and general reading script, and then up. That's really harsh. Like,
It is.
you know, like how can people be kind when things happen like this? How can still kind?
So I think that's the catch-22, isn't it? Because we know all of us are all human that work there, right? We all get up in the morning. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. We're not that different from each other, whether you're a CEO or, you work in the mailroom. Everybody gets dressed and gets ready the same way every morning. But I think when you get to companies and in the business of making money, and I've always prided myself on being able to do this when at work, is it really isn't personal. It's strictly business. And understanding that there is a very, very firm line between the company, especially when it's these large corporations. It's strictly business. They really don't care about the person. You're just a tool, just like a computer. And so you have to draw that line too for yourself of, this isn't personal at all. This is strictly business. Although in the moment I will say it felt very personal. Because again, I'm only human, right? And it happened to me, so it affected me. But there is a very, very big, thick line between business and personal. But that being said, I think it is on the onus of the company to realize that their tools are people, that they do think and feel and have emotions and have needs and dreams, and what is something that they can do to either soften that blow or to help people be prepared in the case that it happens. So like having, financial advisors available, having grief counselors available, having recruiters or, job coaches, resume reviews available to people when they get laid off, so that you're not blindsided and thrown in the gutter. You're actually blindsided, and then, but we have this help for you. You were valuable. You are valuable. We're sorry. Here's something to help you. I think that would be a huge, huge benefit for the majority of people.
What you say is really true. Like they always say, okay, don't take it personally, but it's kind of two voices. Like when they want to get rid of someone, they will say, okay, it's strictly business. It was not because of you. You did a good job. Thank you so much. Bye bye. They kind of make it really fast. But when you are in the job, like they just kind of want you to be natural, be more personal, be more like into the office life, into the corporate culture, because to go inside this corporate culture, you need to bring a little of yourself, because we are not robots, so you tend to sometimes share some picture of kids, say some story of vacations and all of that. And I think it's really difficult to not take it personal, because the job is tied to your life, is tied to your identity in the life, ranking, in the social ranking, and that's really something sensible, because when someone loses job, also it means maybe have less vacation for kids, maybe have less presence for kids, or maybe have in the future maybe not so much good schools for kids, because everything is linked up, and the base of the society we have today is all led by the work. But in our new society that I call the new economy, like the work became something like the corporations are using for the benefit of already people who have already insane amount of money. and that just want more, but they don't think like laying off more people, so potential customers for the product, in the matter of business. So maybe who will buy it again? Who will buy the service? Who will be interested into the service again? And I just think like it's really difficult to not take it personally. It's almost impossible because it's just kind of make a pause into your personal life.
Yeah.
Because your corporate character is tied to a real person. And when they say, okay, don't come in the office anymore, you are done. But your corporate character is finished, a VP of all of this, it's finished,
Yeah.
But the real person that needs to reinvent itself is the one who was working with his real body, with his real mind. And it's really difficult not to be upset. And you said something really important, like employers, they don't even give like a guidance, how to survive this period, financial advice, etc., etc. And you said something like, okay, how I'm gonna feed myself, how I'm gonna pay this, because we are not prepared for that. We have a salary and we just get comfortable with receiving every month or every week in America maybe the salary, and we are not prepared of when this thing finish, how do we survive?
Yeah.
That's really
huge. It's a huge gap in, I think, I know in America especially, but it seems like it's a global thing where it's a huge gap in our education, right? Like you learn math, you learn how to read and write, but you don't know how to be financially savvy or financially educated, or you don't know how to market yourself to employers, how to interview correctly, or office etiquette, like how to read people and discern what they need from you or want from you or what they want out of life. And I think, my background definitely helps me with that a lot more, because I'm always fascinated by why do people think the way they think, and why do they do what they do, like what motivates that. And I think, also through this layoff, processing the layoff, journaling, writing about it, trying to figure out just some sort of meaning from it, and not just take it personally, but try to truly use it as a foundation of kind of reframe my perspective and how I looked at it. Instead of this is what was taken from me, I'm trying to look at it as this is what I've gained. They paid me to hone my skills in these areas. They paid for me to be able to understand these different aspects of a company or a, specifically clinical research, but an industry. I now can look at something and do a deep dive analytics on it. Easier than the average person. So how do I take what they paid for me to be able to do? How do I take my education, and how do I take what I'm passionate about and use this as an opportunity instead of I'm a victim of layoff? Make it more of they gave me the opportunity to unchain from the corporate machine. They gave me that opportunity to reinvent and truly understand what it is that I want to do and who I want to be and what I want my identity tied to now. So I'm trying. I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I am trying to look at this as an opportunity instead of a setback.
I just had two questions on the layoff part. So what employers, in your self-experience, what employers could do better when handling layoffs?
treat it like it's just a task that they need to check off for the day. I think for mine, the worst part for mine in particular was literally staring at a black screen where nobody had their cameras on. Like, they couldn't even look at me. Like, if they didn't look at me and I didn't look at them, they'd be able to remove themselves from the situation. Like, you know, my boss knew things, small things about my life, about my kids, about the family, my husband, you know, and so don't be so detached. I'm not saying you need to be emotionally invested in the person. That would be a lot for anybody to take on, to be emotionally invested in every single person that you fire or lay off. But don't remove that human component. Don't make it mechanical. Make it so that the person doesn't feel like a discard. You know, make it truly, this is really hard for us to do, and we're really, really sorry, but it's, you know, it's out of our hands. Don't cut people off. And I feel like if they were more human about it, there would be less people that are acting out of spite back towards that company. I don't believe in burning bridges. So, you know, I wouldn't say anybody that took part in my layoff is a bad person or I hate them. Because truly it's not like they made that decision. You know, it's kind of like a communal decision by a panel that looks at numbers and then looks at salaries. And that's generally speaking how they do it. It's not, oh, we don't like that person because X, Y, and Z. It's generally, especially in big corporations, it's a line by line. Who's making the most money? Who's bringing in the most revenue? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? My department, it's hard to make money in clinical research in the part that I worked in because I worked in rare and orphan diseases. And those aren't money makers. It's not like working in obesity or cardiology or cancer, oncology. So if you're going to make cuts, you're going to cut out the parts that don't make as much revenue. And that's what I mean by I get it. That's not personal. That's business. However, the way it's delivered can be personal. And you can make it easier for that person on receiving that call. Because someday it might be you. You're not immune. It could be you next. You never know.
And sometimes layoffs can happen in a really bad time. I was reading someone's story yesterday. She was saying, oh, I just decided to move and to buy a bigger apartment and to engage myself inside a rental and move with my fiance, and then I'm laid off.
Yeah.
Wow. So I can't even pay the money of, the monthly money to the bank.
Yeah.
That was really hurtful to read. It was really hurtful. And you can feel like the scare and, the total panic on the life. And this kind of made me realize that our life as adults is really so much open. We can just fall down at any moment or maybe rise up at any moment. It's really thin. It's really thin. Because we didn't maybe build so much safety around us, and it was not our fault. We were told that you just study hard, and then you will always find a job. And once you just make well your job, there's no way you can lose it.
Yeah, if you work hard, right?
If you work hard, yeah. So we work at school really well. So you had a bachelor, you had a master's, you climbed the corporate ladder perfectly. You manage well office politics, you survive it, and you did your best job. So there's no reason this kind of thing can happen to just to disturb, the way you were building your life. So it's really difficult to swallow the pill. It's really difficult. And
Yeah.
do you have some practical first steps for someone who has just been laid off? And there are many in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. My full advice is take the first few days, the first week, to feel it. Like, give yourself permission to really, really feel what just happened. The anger, the grief, the exhaustion, the confusion, the stress, the fear. Just allow yourself that time. Don't jump right back in, because I made that mistake. I woke up that following Monday morning with a just fiery rage of, I am going to prove them wrong. I'm worth something to somebody. That was back in April. And it's October. I still don't have a new job. And I have probably applied to, at this point, we're nearing 200 now. And so I did not give myself, in that first few days, weeks, time to actually process what this means. So give yourself that time. Give yourself permission to just feel. Beyond that, hard facts, you need to sit down and look at your finances real quick. And you need to figure out what your tipping point is. How long are you able to survive paying your bills without anything falling off, without nothing being late or falling behind? How long do you have? And take a good hard look at it and be truly honest with yourself about your spending, and just spend some time really combing through those and saying, okay, I spend X amount at this store every month. Do I really need that right now? Mm-hmm. And really breaking it down to what are needs and what is it really, is it a want? So I did that. Fortunately enough, I'm married. I have a 2-income household. But, losing my salary was still a big hit, because our life was structured around both of us having higher paying jobs. And so losing just one of those puts us back down, right? So it's understanding the finance part. And then I would also say, get yourself someone to help you critically look at your resume. Don't do it yourself, because you're still going to be in a place where you're stuck in a brain fog, where you can't remember everything, where you might not see your resume as clearly because it's kind of tainted now, right? It's jaded. You're looking at it through jaded eyes, and so really have someone else to help. And then from there, it's, do you want to get another job? Can you afford to not have a job? Or can you humble yourself and say, I might have been a global manager, but to make ends meet, can I do something else that might not be my 6-figure salary, but if I just make X amount a month, we can still live at the level, we'll be okay, right? So humbling yourself is another way to say that. And then I think lastly, it's truly evaluate who you are without this role. And is this role what you want to still be? And what would you do instead? And how do you make that happen?
I just have a last question in this part is like, were you financially prepared at the time that arrived? No.
Not at all. No, I mean, we are smart with our money, but we weren't prepared to not have two incomes. So, savings, 401ks, dividend, like that kind of thing for retirement, but not something that's not tied up in long-term use. So having more short-term accessible funds to prepare for something like this, absolutely not. No. I don't think any average person is.
Because what people sometimes forget is like we have of course the fight of during our career to survive, and we have a second fight is when we retire. Do we gonna have enough money to just retire to survive, because people live longer? And here in France, and I don't know if it's the case in America, but I think it might be the case in some regions, like people already retired but keep working, keep working McDonald's, to make ends meet, because the pension they are receiving is not enough. And of course, some people can make, into the 400K, like a lot of money there, but when we get old, sometimes we are sick too. And the insulation we company paid is really good, but when you're outside of the company, it's another story too. And in America, insulation is really, really a huge problem there, most than in France. It's really hell. Like you just go to Born Kid and you need to pay 10,000 K for Born.
It's a lot. It depends. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. It depends on what insurance you have and what they cover, and there's all these different levels. It's very, very, very confusing.
But that's crazy. In France, you just go to hospital, you born and you go with nothing. So you just take your baby and nobody come to bother you. It's dumb.
We don't have that. But I think, per capita though, on the flip side of that, we pay out of pocket and our employer pays out of pocket for us to have insurance. If you're employed, if you don't, you have to self-insure. But then on the flip side of that, our taxes are lower. So we don't pay into that. It's just a different way that we pay into it. But insurance companies are definitely, don't get me started on insurance companies. But again, with that financial preparedness, I think in this day and age especially, it is important to always have not just your career, but to have something on the side that's bringing in some sort of extra income, whether, you open up like a storefront online that's selling whatever, or, you sell cookies, or
second
you're
job,
offering consulting services, or you're making mini lessons that you can sell. It's always important to, and I've learned that now, because now I've wrote a book about this whole experience as a way to process what happened to me. And it's let down, and it's literally about what happened to me, what I've been working through, and practical tips of how to get through those different stages. Quick read, like 60 pages. It's on Amazon.
And so this is the last part, like the rebirth process. And in this rebirth process, you just said it, like you just wrote a book, and the book name is Let Down, What Happens After You Are No Longer Essential, by Tessa Callan. And it's on Amazon, it's on bookshop.org, and I can kind of read a little the description. You thought the layoff was the end of the story. Turns out it's just the beginning. Part memoir, part survival guide. Let Down is a brutal, honest, sometimes funny, always validating look at what really happens after you lose your job and your footing. Tessa Callan was dedicated employee, creative thinker, and steady contributor until she wasn't. With one unexpected call, her career unraveled. What followed wasn't just a job search, it was a complete redefinition of identity, purpose, and survival. Inside these pages, you will find a real-time look at the emotional rollercoaster of the job loss, practical tools for navigating money stress, burnout, and rejections, encouragement for every kind of pivot, new career, new path, or just learning to rest. Gentle reminders that your value isn't tied to a paycheck, whether you are rage applying, avoiding your inbox, wondering who you are without a title, or dreaming up a next chapter that finally fits. This book is for you. You're not behind, you're not broken. You're just in the middle of a chapter you haven't read yet. That's really, really deep. That's really deep. So in this book, I really want to know the process of writing this book because many people, just kind of want to forget, So you wrote this book when?
Yeah. So it started off as a way to keep my sanity. The rebuild process for me, I needed to understand why I felt the way I was feeling. I needed to understand why I was getting so depressed. I needed to understand what now. I needed to understand where to put all of those emotions. And so I just started writing it down as a way to get it out of me, so that maybe I could come back and look at it with a more detached eye when I was out of that moment, when I was out of that feeling. And then once I got that down, I was like, okay, so how do I work through this? How do I work through that? How do I work through this fear? How do I work through the fear of not being able to feed my kids? How do I work through the fear of not getting a new job? How do I work through the loss of my identity? And how do I rebuild that? And so that's what it started as. And then once I started putting what I was doing down, like actionable steps that I could take, I was like, you know what? And then I was like, I wonder if there's a book that can also help me process this. And almost every single book that I looked at that was about being laid off was literally a very clinical, step-by-step, this is what you should do. The human element that we had talked about earlier, it was gone. It wasn't there. And it was like a manual for what to do instead of a process, a grieving process. We have lots of self-help books that are about grief, that are about loss of a loved one, loss of a friend, but nothing that combines kind of that step-by-step, how do you help yourself after you lose your job? And how do you rebuild internally after you lose your job? So I was trying to make it like a bite-sized version of that because I'm not a certified psychologist, right? So this is just a personal account of me and my process and my feelings and what I did. And I'm sure some of the advice in there is strictly American. But I think overall it could apply to anyone. And it's definitely a brutal honesty about like a peek into my personal diary about how I felt and still am feeling. Each day is a new day and it's a different struggle. So.
Yeah, because I think, just to give people a kind of quick look, the book looks like this.
Oh, yeah. Well, here, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have it. Oh, wow. That's really, really beautiful. Not for yourself. That's really beautiful. So I just saw, is it possible to buy it online?
Mm-hmm.
Like have it on PDF?
Oh, so I'm working on an ebook copy of it. So
ebook.
if you have a Kindle or something like that you can download
Okay.
through Amazon. So I'm working on getting that up and running.
Okay. Because on my Amazon friends, they just have the paper, the physical.
The paperback.
Yeah, the physical.
Yeah, and it is only in English. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Oh, that's really good. Okay. So, you know, um, that book, I just saw that you were, posting something on the LinkedIn. You just let people understand that you were writing something and the process of writing and all that. Um, what is finally your total point of view on how our society works around the job? Because you said a lot of things. You said when you are inside the company, when you are under management role, nobody cares about you. Like nobody takes you seriously, and you even saw some people spending 15 years, 20 years under management role because they couldn't just make it up. And I remember we talked, before that call. You said to me like, even in America, even you were laid off for economic reason, but people will tend to look you down. Looks like it's your own fault that you were laid off. But the reality, and we saw it on the TV, layoff is happening everywhere, and everyone is in danger of that. So I don't understand this kind of different thinking, about that.
I think it's public facing. Mass media will say layoffs are happening, and that it's not the people's fault or whatever. However, when you get into a more myopic space, when you pull it in, there's still a stigma, and there's still I'll fully admit that my friends do not know. The only people in my family that know are my husband and my parents. Nobody else knows.
Really?
And only my immediate colleagues know.
Oh, why that?
Because there's still that stigma there of, yeah, you got laid off, but what is it that you did to get identified? How did you get tagged? How did you get flagged? Yeah. You must have stood out some way to be identified as someone who got laid off. And whether that's something you did personally or whether it was just your salary was too high and they wanted to cut costs, I think there's still that stigma of layoffs are still partly your fault for being identified for the layoff, if that makes sense. And I think that it's more of a generational thing. I think that stigma is starting to fade a little bit more. It's starting to be more talked about. It's starting to be more of something that people genuinely feel is out of your control. But I think, upwards, people born in the 90s before, in the back of your mind, there's still that stigma of, what did that person do wrong? They had to have done something, right? They were there for 15 years, 10 years, 5 years. Why now? What did they do recently to kind of make people take notice to peg them for a layoff? So I think it's partly that, and then it's partly, I haven't told a lot of people because I didn't want what are you going to do now?
Yeah, that's question. Wow, that's really, I had it too. I had it last year. Also, what you want to do about your life now?
Yeah.
Why ask this kind of thing? Like, I'm just feeling bad and I'm trying to figure it out, But I think some people like to listen about another people suffering. Looks like it fits them and makes them feel like in a good position, So it feels good, to just kind of have some kind of revenge, some low-key hateful revenge, you know. So I can totally understand you. I can really totally understand you. And I know you tried consulting. So I know when we are in corporate, we just to say, okay, if I'm just outside of corporate, I can try consulting. It will be easy. I have so much experience. I will find clients, badada, badada. And I just know people. People know me. I can reach out to them. So when I was fired, like laid off, I just tried to reach out to old clients that I was working for them like 1 week ago. So we finished Friday. The work was really good. They were so much happy, and they never replied.
Yeah.
Just for a recommendation, just for a message saying I did a good job, like they just said, you know, they never replied. That was crazy. Like the colleague that I was good with, or maybe you can put a recommendation for me. They were not answering the phone anymore. And I tried consulting, but it's a really, really, really hell of hard. So I want to know what's your experience trying to put your own practice.
So I'm still in the throes of it. And I'm still figuring out, because I know, throughout my corporate career, I worked very hard to get all these certifications and letters behind my name that they say you should get and will differentiate you, like Lean, Six Sigma, change management, anything that was trending at the moment. I was getting the certification for. I was like, I'm going to get all the letters, right? Have the whole alphabet behind my name. And I think on paper it helps. Like you look at that and you're like, oh, impressive. But really all it is different ways of thinking. And anyone can actually learn them and implement them. And as far as consulting, getting my foot into that, I think instead of joining a large firm, for me, I've got a couple more book ideas in the works. But for me, it's having it happen more organically, like this conversation, very organic in its inception and how it happened. And really taking the time to go on Reddit, to go on Discord, to go on, the various other platforms that people go on to rant or rave or ask questions, and try to really analyze what it is that there are gaps in, that maybe something I've learned to do and honed over the past, years of my career could be a benefit to someone else. So it's slow going. But in the meantime, I'm also allowing myself to try other ventures, as I'm writing books and as I'm, kind of publishing under other pen names and, just trying to see where it hits. I'm fortunate that I'm able to do that because I do have more financial stability than most when they get laid off. So I fully acknowledge my privilege in being able to do that. Not everybody can. But with that, everybody can find that passion and find that outside the workforce passion to turn into an income if they really want to, even while they're working.
I just had like 3 more questions. The conversation is always passionate because it's really deep and I kind of learn a lot too, So, what is your general thought about our how to frame it? Like, I have the word in French, but I need to translate it. What is your general thoughts about how the actual job market and the competitiveness environment are just beating our companies? Because I know you really had a high view on how the corporate works. And so I'm so much curious about, because in France, for example, and even in America, companies are complaining about the Chinese competitions. They make a good product, better quality than in the past, less expensive. Shane killed in France almost all the small stores, like a clothes store, and even some bigger company who own many stores. They're just dying one after one. And they're asking the government to put a tax on everyone buying on Shane. You will pay more tax, to punish people for making the right choice. And they just want to force them buying something too much expensive for, to save the business. But, so how do you see, like, this work environment survive in this highly competitiveness market with the mondialization just made it become really hell, for them. And I heard like Tesla offered 1 trillion of salary to Elon Musk if he succeeds to make this company not just an automotive company, but also an AI global service for car company, because they are thinking about reinventing themselves in this new economic market. So what's your general thought on that? I know the question is really long, sorry.
No, it's fine. So, in general, and I think this is a global thing, in general, in corporate, the job market is extremely volatile. So for the average everyday person like us, jobs are no longer, I think I touched on this earlier, they're not lifelong commitments, they're not safe havens, they're not guaranteed. And the strategy with that, and I think the mindset of the worker is changing, which is also helping to change the job culture and the job market. So I think it's not one is affecting the other. I think it's kind of like a two-way. This is how jobs are. They're extremely competitive. They're extremely volatile. But on the other hand, you also have people who have the mindset of, I'm not going to stay at this company for my entire life and dedicate my life to them because it's just a job. So I'm going to work here, and then I'm going to go work here, and then I'm going to work. So I think it's like a two-way influence there, if that makes sense. Company culture is changing, workforce culture is changing, and they're clashing with each other and creating kind of this maelstrom of a job market. And I think one of the big things right now is adaptability, right? Like they always talk about an adaptive workforce or an adaptive model or an adaptive strategy. And what does that really mean? And how do you do that? How do you unlearn a job to be able to pivot, reskill, rewrite yourself over and over and over again because of the world? And I think you touched on AI, like the world is changing so fast. How do we keep up with that? And how do we differentiate ourselves in that market? I think the only places that this isn't really affecting are like small businesses, mom and pop stores, or kind of standard things that don't really ever change, like a grocery store. Or, some of those kind of like basics, funeral homes. So my grandfather, bless his soul, he always said, if you want to make money and you want job stability, go into either death or dirt.
He's right.
So garbage collection or, grave digging was his advice. So, everything else is it's moving so fast. It's going to be interesting over the next 10 years, even next 5, what the job market looks like then, because I think a lot of it is going to be, it's headed towards automation. Even before I was laid off, we were automizing half of the stuff that we were doing. It wasn't human-led anymore. It was just human-reviewed. So clinical research is definitely on that path. And I think of clinical research as, every industry is.
But what do you think of, that the impact of this on the new generation? Because we have kids, and those kids are, I saw on NBC like a documentary, like even high schoolers, they can't even get an internship, because too many people are looking for jobs. Even internship are difficult. Everything becomes difficult. And so how do you see that impact of AI in our society, and how it can kind of sort up itself? Because we talk about bubble, AI bubble, so maybe it's just a bubble, and maybe something we just get back normal, because 87% of companies implementing AI are just not seeing it giving a real deep value.
Yeah. So I think there's two parts to it, right? I think the first and the simplest is how it impacts work in general. And I think because of AI, and I think because AI is going to replace a lot of roles in companies, regardless of the industry, right? They're going to be able to streamline and do it faster with AI. I think you're going to see more of a resurgence in jobs that AI cannot do, like trade work, right? AI can't weld. AI can't pave roads. Not yet, anyways, right? So they can't lay the infrastructure of a city. They can't maintain infrastructure. So I think you're going to see is a lot more people that are avoiding college and going to trade school instead. I don't know what y'all call it in France, but I assume y'all have something similar for skilled, like
professional school.
There you go, professional school. Yeah. Professional school, skilled labor. We call it trades. You're going to see a lot more of that coming because there was such a push for the longest time, for the last 20 plus years, to go get a degree that the trades dropped off. And now I think we're going to see a resurgence of the trades because AI is making some of those college-educated jobs that it's eliminating the need for them. And then on a cultural aspect, I think we really need to be careful about how we utilize and push AI. I think it should stay in its own lane as a tool, right? I think it's great for analyzing data. I think it's great for pulling information quickly. I think it's great for, kind of streamlining processes. But if we start utilizing it for everything, and we in turn just become button pushers, I think that there is a real possibility that we start losing, especially with the younger generations, the more you become reliant upon it for the big things, you start using it for the little things, you start losing that ability to do rational thought, critical thinking, original thought, because everything is just dumped at you. You don't have to work hard for it anymore. There's no thrill of the hunt of knowledge that AI provides, right? Because it just spoon feeds it right to you. And so you don't truly understand the value of that knowledge if you have not dug it up for yourself and made those connections for yourself. And so I worry that complacency and streamlined thought is going to become the norm. And innovation and constructive, like just deep thought it's going to become like kind of a one-off individual. And if we we didn't have innovation, we wouldn't have AI, right? So it's a double-edged sword for me. Like, I use AI. I'm not against it, but I keep it where it belongs. I don't use it to think for me. I just use it to make certain tasks quicker.
So, Tessa, what is your final word? What do you want to say to the world?
Final word. So in regards to layoffs, I know it can feel like the end. It can feel like the end of essentially everything. Your identity, your career, your job, your life, in some cases for some people. But I challenge you to reframe the way you look at it. I challenge you to look at it as a reset, as an opportunity, and as a chance to really get to the root of who you are. So your skills that you've learned, your story up until this point, your voice, those don't just simply disappear because a company decided that you were no longer essential, right? Your worth ultimately is not tied to a company. So I challenge you to let go of your guilt, to let go of the shame, and let go of whatever expectations that you had. And I challenge you to really reevaluate who you are, because one layoff, it truly doesn't erase your value or determine your future. Only you can do that.
Thank you so much for those words, Tessa. Those words are really deep because, I'm myself, on this path of the rebirth. And so I kind of, see myself also on your words, on some part of your words or what you're saying. And I just wanted to say to you, thank you for having this courage, to talk about that. And having this faith, in life and doing just what you need to do for yourself, for your family, and for your future. It's really strong. And so I'm really glad to just found your message and that you accepted this invitation. And thank you so much for that. And so I just want to say to the people who listen to us that, your story is available on Amazon. The book is available on Amazon, everywhere online. It's really easy to find. They already saw, the image of the book. It's really interesting, and that so if they want to follow more about you, but they just need to, to write you directly. Sorry.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you can post the link or whatever, but you can link them to my Gmail. It's tessacallan.books@gmail.com.
Yeah.
More than happy to chat with anyone. I mean, even if people just need someone to listen.
To vent.
I get it. I get where you're at. And I'm more than happy to be, just an open ear. Or someone to bounce ideas off of if you're trying something new for the first time. So it's scary, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be scared. So just we really thank you for your time, for all of that, and thank you so much. So we keep in touch. So don't go out. We just cut off the recording. So
okay.
So take care, and we just keep staying in touch. And it's a process, and we will see what this process will give, for both of us. So I think to me, I always say it's one of the best time of my life, but also one of the best scary time of my life, because I'm kind of out of control. I don't know where I'm gonna be tomorrow, and the corporate structure just left me like, wow, So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
difficult.
it's a different world, not being beholden to someone else.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different world, and I think some people thrive in that and desperately need that. And I thought I did, but I'm now finding that being beholden to myself, and allowing myself the freedom of thought, essentially, um, I'm actually happier than I have been in a long time. I mean, my husband says it all the time. He's like, if we can continue to make this work, this is the happiest I've ever seen you.
Wow.
Wow. And so writing books, and like I've got a bunch of books under different names, because some of them aren't related to the others, like this one. But yeah, so there's books by different names that are coming. Like clothing, I've done. Board games I've looked into. Like I've developed a board game. Like it's insane. The like maelstrom in my brain now. That being laid off just unleashed in me. It's crazy in there now. So it's great though.
That's really nice. Thank you so much, Tessa, and take good care of yourself. And thank you so much to the people who listen to us. And we just keep doing the good work. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.